there'll be a little thing going up to say to record. So hello and welcome. I'm Danielle. I'm the clinical animal behaviorist, so one of them here at Control the Meerkat. And we do a regular thing every month to kind of have a chat to everyone about their dogs. And one of the biggest things that we find is that decompression is really, really important, but so difficult to actually do and wrap your head around, especially when you're living with a dog that is complicated, that has problems that that you struggle with. You kind of get very stressed. The walks become a chore. You end up kind of almost resenting them a little bit, but then you also love them, and you get all these very complicated emotions around these dogs, and you kind of just want it to stop. And then you reach out to a lot of trainers, and straight away they are all like, okay, yeah, let's do this training, let's do that training. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes you get so far, sometimes you don't. And a lot of it is all down to this decompression time, is that our dogs need to have times where they can just relax, and we can relax with them. So everyone can just settle down and have a little bit of a smaller world for a short amount of time. The amount of time will vary depending on the dogs. There are some clients that we have that have dogs that have got really severe trauma where they need a small world for the majority of their lives because they've been through a lot of really traumatic stuff. We've got other dogs that just need a small world for a few weeks and in between, but just because we're making their world a little bit shorter doesn't mean it's any less enriching for them. We still want to help build them up. And a lot of this is about providing them a really secure base to start off with, as well as giving ourselves a bit of a mental health holiday, because it is incredibly stressful. It is incredibly isolating. And us and dogs are both social species. You know, we crave that connection with other people. And generally dog people, we get dogs because we are social. You know, we want to be able to go out on a walk. We want to speak to other dog owners. We want to kind of watch our dogs play. Some might want to join dog clubs and engage in different dog sports or classes and things like that. And when we get a dog that has complications, we almost have to grieve for the future of the life that we wanted for that dog and for ourselves. And we kind of have to change our mindset from what we want to what's actually best for them. And that's an incredibly hard thing to do. And that's where decompression can really help, because it gives everyone some time to just take a step back and think about what it is that causes our dogs to react the way that they do, how we can help support them in those situations, but what we can do to help avoid them while still maintaining a relationship. And relationship building is one of the key parts to this decompression time. It's taking time away from the stress, away from the busy, hectic world, and going, you know what, let's find something that me and my dog can do together where we can reconnect and reform our bond. Because often the bond is quite fragile with reactive dogs, because we become very inconsistent with them through no fault of anyone's. It's just there are some days where we have the patience to be able to work with them, and there are some days where you almost want to scream at them, why can't you just be a normal dog? Why do you react like this? Why can't you just, you know, not pull on the lead? Why can't you just say hi nicely? Why can't you stop barking at the window? Why can't you? And it's really, really difficult for us all to work through that. Does that sound familiar for anyone? Yeah. So
Very
I'll
much
try not to
so.
make anyone cry, because it is really emotional when you're dealing with animals, because we love them so much. You know, we want the best for them, and you tend to have a stronger relationship with our complicated dogs than you do with other dogs because of the amount of effort you put into it. But it is hard going,
Yeah.
incredibly difficult. So I want to show everyone one of our meerkats that's all about kind of like their base. So this is one of the slides that we have in the community that's going to go into some of our books, not released just yet. And this is all about forming a base for our dogs. And this is the decompression. And what we want out of a base, I'll just let Annie connect to audio and see how she's doing. There we go. Hello, Annie. So the important bit about building our base is to focus on 4 main things with it. And building our base is all about attachment. It's reconnecting with our dogs away from everything that stresses both them and you. Give yourselves time to just step away from things for a little bit, and try not to let the societal pressures, family pressures, partner pressures, friends pressures, try and pressure you into doing things that you know your dog is not ready for. You know your dog, they don't. And there are some dogs that are just, I call them golden dogs, where no matter what they've been through, they are just happy and golden, and they behave themselves. And it's almost like they were born pre-trained. Like the people have done very little with them, and they're just wonderful. And they're really good genetics. You can have the opposite, where you can have dogs that have had the best lives as far as we know, and everything we've done has been right, but they struggle. And it's not that you've done anything wrong. It's that there's usually something in the dog that is just causing them to be a little bit complicated. So we want to break all that down and start here. So building their base is all about, first of all, bonding. So it's just spending time together. And that time we want to spend together is just away from everything. So it's can they chill out with you in the house and just relax? You know, are they able to settle down next to you? Or can they not sleep at all? You know, where are they on their relaxation journey? Settle down. You know, do they have any favorite games that they like to play? Are there any games that you could try a new activity together? Something to help kind of build that bond back up. Some of our reactive dogs and our complicated dogs don't necessarily want to play to start off with. Some of them really struggle with playing. Others, play is the only thing that they can engage with because food's too much. Most of the time, sniffing is something that we can get into most dogs because they do it naturally. And even if they don't ingest and eat the food that we're sniffing with, they're still kind of engaging in that activity with us. Advocating for them is a second thing that's really important for these dogs. And as people, mostly women, especially if you're English, we really struggle to advocate for our dogs because we're really polite. You know, we don't want to say no to the stranger that wants to come and force our dogs. You know, when the friendly dogs are running over, sometimes it can be really difficult to kind of be more forceful with them and say, no, you're going to stress my dog out, my dog's upset, or they're scared. And advocating for our dogs is really difficult, but they really need us to be able to do that. So it's finding ways that we can advocate for them and be their voice and say, no, you can't touch them. Or when visitors come round, we all have that family member or that friend that comes around that thinks they are like the dog guru. It's like, oh, it's okay, I've got dogs. You know, they'll be fine with me. And they will push them further than they need to, and they won't listen to us. So it's about kind of being firmer with these people and saying, you know what, if you come around to my house, you have to follow these rules. Like, leave my dog alone, just pay no attention to them, let me deal with it. Because there's always really difficult ways. If you have a generic brief phrase to help advocate, one of my favorite things to say to people when they do want to, especially if they want to touch my dogs, especially if it's people that I don't know, I'm a lot firmer now. So now I'll just say, don't touch them. Or I'll just get on my phone and kind of walk past. Previously, especially my reactive boy, I would say that they're contagious and they have mange, or they have conjunctivitis, or something along those lines that would make them go, oh. Because if you say that they're nervous or they're scared, most people, they won't listen to you. They'll disrespect that boundary straight away and go, oh, it's all right, I'm good with dogs. But if you say the dog is sick with something contagious, they're less likely. So that's kind of my my cop out, if I'm honest, about to kind of stop people from coming over. Or if people have dogs that are rushing up, kind of saying something along those lines, or that they've recently had surgery, something that will kind of trigger more empathy. Empathy or disgust, I find, are the two ways to get through to people, depending on what they are. Either something that will disgust the person and make them go, ooh, or something that'll go, oh, poor thing, yeah, sure, we'll move away. But for some reason, fear and anxiety and nervousness don't make people want to move away. It almost kind of triggers the opposite response in people, which might be compassion with some, it might be ego with others, where they want to try and do something. So when we're advocating for our dogs, that's kind of the phrases that I tend to try and use, is either just be rude and hope you never see them again. I'll say that they're contagious. It's one of the ones that I tend to try and go for, because these people will interfere with our dog space and they ruin all of our hard work. And when we're trying to build up a bond and connection with our dogs and build in that trust, every time someone breaks that, they're breaking the trust between us and our dogs, because our dogs are like, okay, you can't protect me from these people. You can't stop them from coming over, so I'm going to. And it almost dips into that kind of trust account that we build with our dogs. And they're like, I can't rely on you in this situation. So we have to really kind of stand up for them. Similar to how you would do if a stranger was to reach out and touch your child. You know, if they just walk past and kind of stroke your child on the head, you'd be a little bit taken back by it. So don't touch my daughter. You know, don't just reach out and touch my son. To try and be a little bit firmer with people is incredibly difficult, which is why I like to use the cop out of yeah, they've got a medical problem going on. We want to try and support our dogs in these situations, and support is all about safety. It's how to kind of build their confidence. And some dogs, when they get stressed, it's not the stress reaction that is going to make them better or worse. It's how we deal with it afterwards that does. So if they feel supported after they've kind of got scared by something and they're able to come back and kind of reset and feel safe with you, they're going to be able to process that a lot faster and in a healthier way than if they're kind of left to deal with it on their own. And you do see out and about and all over social media about don't reinforce fear. It's said everywhere, you know, don't stroke your dog during fireworks night, don't give them a cuddle. And it's all rubbish, to be honest. You can't reinforce an emotion. The emotion is going to be there regardless of the behavior that they do. But what we can do is help support them through that. So if your dog is a dog that genuinely needs contact, they need that tactile stimulation when they're scared, by all means give it to them. If they're a dog that needs a distraction, they need some play, give it to them. Whatever it is that helps them feel better and be able to reset themselves is the most important part after a scary incident. It's just, okay, let's step away, get you out of here, and let's give you somewhere you can relax. Like sprinkle some food in the grass for you to have a sniff while you process this. It's not letting them struggle on their own and finding out how to support them. One of the best ways is to just not expose them to situations that they're not ready for yet, and keeping them just in their safe bubble where you can start to build up their confidence in safe environments before you kind of go out into the real world. And empathy is the big part of that. It's making sure that we can empathize with our dogs, because it's once you realize why they're reacting, whether it's because they are an anxious dog, sometimes they appear fine until something happens, in which case they're a fearful dog, because they're usually okay until the scary thing happens. Some dogs just get frustrated really, really quickly, and then not knowing how to deal with that frustration can then lead to anxiety. Some dogs, it's a bit more complicated, where they have a mix of a few different feelings going on at the same time, and they're almost like in conflict, where they want to do something but they can't do it, or they're not sure how to do it, and then they just kind of explode in a whole kind of bounce and noise, as like a Tasmanian devil almost on the end of a lead. They just don't know what to do. So avoiding the situations where they're going to repeat that, and go, okay, let's start at home, let's start building up your base and see what is it that our dogs like, what is it that they enjoy, and just starting to bond and connect with them again. Because if we can start to get them to really relax in those areas, it makes it a lot easier for us further down the line. Now, I want to show you a little bubble here, if it connects over. And I want you to imagine that all of your dogs are in the middle of this little hole here in the red bit. So the green bit is when our dogs first see something, or they hear something, they smell something, they're left alone, whatever it is that they're reacting to. But whatever it is isn't there long enough for it to be a problem, or it's far enough away that it isn't a problem for them. So there's always a point where they're able to be exposed to that thing that scares them, but they're like, okay, that's far enough away, or it's not here long enough, I can deal with that, that's okay. As that starts to change, they get into that kind of reactive bit, where you'll see them start to show very subtle signs of reactivity, where it's like wail eye, or they'll start to move their heads, they'll give low level growls, they might start to stiffen up and stare. This is the point where they still have that kind of conscious control over what they do. And they might take treats at this time, they might not. As the thing either gets closer to them or stays there for longer or gets louder, that's where it kind of hits that personal bubble. And that's the bit where our dogs get emotionally hijacked. That's where our meerkat tends to take over. If you see the analogy with our meerkats, where the dogs will just, they freak out, and there's nothing we can do in that moment that can stop them. So when we're building up our base and working with that decompression, it's making sure that they are in the green zone for as long as possible. We want to make sure that all the threats and things are as far away from the dogs or as short as possible, so they're able to kind of bounce back and they can stay in this situation for longer. The more they can be there, the more confident they get, the more safe they feel. That starts to grow, and the reactive bits start to shrink as the dogs go, actually, I'm safe. And decompression and building up a really supportive base for our dogs is the key for this. If we can get them to feel safe with us, if we can teach them, actually, I'm going to support you through this, I'm going to work through it. If we can get that really secure attachment through with our dogs, we can then start to gradually expose them to situations where they struggle, and they'll start to come to us and go, Mum, I need help, and we can help them. And the more they can experience that, we don't have to worry too much about the desensitization, the counter conditioning, and the training side of things, because our dogs have got this connection with us. And they'll start to go, oh, there's a dog over there. Mum, I'm scared. And you can go, it's all right, it's fine. Let's just do this. And by doing that, we're doing all that training exercises, but it's in a more flowy, natural way. And we can really start to build on that through training later on. But the first bit is just getting them to be able to be in these situations and relax. If our dogs are struggling to be outside in general, then it can all happen from the home. And we can go, okay, let's just relax in the house. Can we relax while the neighbors are outside? Can they relax when there's people walking past the window, or when people in the house are moving around? Fantastic. Can we start to play games? Wonderful. Can we start to take this out into the garden a little bit? Can we do it with a window open, with a door open? If they can do that, then have a look at looking at a secure field nearby that you can hire for like half an hour and go, okay, can we just go and sniff? Because if our dogs struggle to listen and respond to us and relax in fields and outdoor areas where there are no distractions, they're going to really struggle when there are. So building on that decompression time is so important. And the biggest question I often get asked with clients is, how long is this going to take? And I wish I could answer that question, because it very much depends on the dog themselves and how much time you have and how much you're able to kind of go, you know what, we need to spend a little bit of time not doing as much stuff. We are very task orientated as people, but we're dealing with emotions here, and we can't train safety. Like, we can't teach you that if you sit, this is safe. We just have to allow the dogs to experience that. And we can make it faster by building up a really good bond and increasing that secure attachment. But some dogs have never had a secure attachment to anything in their lives. Some of them have been taken away from the mums too early. Others have been bounced around from home to home to home. Even the ones that have been with us, depending on the training methods that you've been advised, sometimes it can be a little bit on the insecure side because they've been a bit conflicted and not too sure what to do. With some of our rescue dogs, we have no idea what their history is or how safe they've ever felt with a person. So it's our job to be that safe place first. So when you first start doing decompression training, it's about having a think about all the things that stress and wind up your dog, all the things that stress and wind up you, because you are also there. And if our dogs get stressed, we get stressed. And if the dogs then know that we get stressed, they get even more stressed. And as social species, our nervous systems will co-regulate, and they'll also almost mirror each other. And I'm not saying that if you're an anxious person, you're going to create an anxious dog. But what can happen is you spot the anxiety more in your dog, so you empathize with them more. And if you start to panic a little bit, they'll start to panic a little bit, and you can both end up in this kind of heightened state. So recognizing what we can do in those situations, and starting off with just breathing exercises. You know, we can teach our dogs how to breathe deeply. We can teach ourselves how to breathe deeply. And it's recognizing our own emotions when we're out on a walk. Because so many of us, especially if you've got a lead reactive dog, when you go out on a walk, you tense up. And like you're staring at the clock before a walk, kind of counting down the dread with the, oh God, I'm going to have to take the dog out soon. Someone might shout at me, this might happen. What if I see this? What if I do this? And we're wound up before we go out the door. So trying to find other activities that we can engage in away from that walk can be so important. And okay, let's find out, how do I relax? How can I help my dog to relax? And how can we utilize this in other situations so we can all start to breathe properly? And to be honest, with dogs, one of the best ways to help them relax is through sniffing and chewing. They are the two things that will naturally help dogs relax. And there's two main forms of sniffing. You've got the kind of snuffling that they do when they're rummaging through leaves and they're kind of searching for stuff. So if you're scatter feeding them, or if you've got snuffle mats, or if you kind of set up kind of, if he's doing any ACE-free work stuff where you kind of put different objects out and they kind of have a mooch around and they explore, that's all snuffing. And it's almost like meditation for dogs. It really helps them to calm and regulate their nervous system. Whereas the searching, the kind of active sniffing where they're hunting and they're searching for specific things, it's more faster and more engaging, and it will knacker them out, but it's not as relaxing as the original snuffling. So giving them things that they can do. So if you know that whenever you see another dog and you start to get stressed, you can take a deep breath and go, let's just go over here and let's go and search this grass, and you kind of scatter some food around in the distance. So your dog has something that they can do as the dog walked past. Just doing little things like that can really help. But we kind of need to build those up in safe areas that becomes a reliable indicator for the dog that it's safe. Having relaxation times at home where you just sit together and just relax and just enjoy that tactile comfort if your dog's a tactile dog, or just sit on the sofa with them at the other side of the sofa if you need to. And it can take weeks, it can take months, but the important part is that no dog has ever died from not going on a walk. It's okay if you are having a stress day to not take them out. There are some clients where we recommend not walk the dogs for at least 2 weeks. We have some clients, I have one at the minute who is sadly, she's a dog meat trade survivor. So she's a dog that lived her entire first 2 years in a crate because she was for the dog meat trade. She's spent another 2 years now where she's only lived in the house, and she's having a wonderful time. At first, it was just one room in the kitchen, and she's gradually got bigger and bigger. She's not at the stage yet where she can leave the house. So she's never been for a walk in her entire life, but she's happy and she's healthy and she's really coming along. If you want to see examples of this, there's a lovely Facebook page called Drax's Galactic Adventures that I really, really encourage everyone to watch. Drax is a puppy farmed Irish wolfhound. He came over from Ireland, and he is owned by another clinical behaviorist called Natalie Light, and she shared his entire journey from, I think it's been about 2 years now, where he arrived and he was just really shut down and curled up and just didn't want to engage with anything. He wouldn't even sniff, like he had pretty much like a closed nose. He just wouldn't engage with anything. He was incredibly shut down. 2 years on, he's galumphing around everywhere around the house. He is so confident and happy. He's another dog that hasn't been for a walk. They own a field where they run the other dogs and do their training work. And because of his fear of vans and transport, they've yet to be able to take him to their own field to take him out. But you see the progression over 2 years of just kind of walking past and throwing some treats down to sitting in there with him and doing the odd kind of stroke and just sitting and relaxing and reading a book near him and just gradually allowing him to just relax and settle. And I think it's really helpful when caregivers can see the professionals that have these dogs and go, look, it's taken me 2 years to be able to put a lead on my dog and go anywhere near a van, and they're professionals, because it is a very, very, very slow process if you do it right. So what I'd like to do is stop my little screen share and open up to any questions if anyone wants me to discuss anything in a bit more detail, or if you want to share any stories. I know some of you in here are clients, others I'm meeting for the first time, so it's lovely to meet you if I am. And does anyone have any questions for me or want me to clarify any points? Is that everyone's gonna be really quiet? Of course, you can ask about sniffing. I'll give you time to type unless you want to unmute yourself. And you can talk, but I won't mention any names if anyone direct messages me. Okay, well, we wait for the message to come through. Oh, here it is. They have a spaniel, so he loves to use his nose. Wonderful. However, he is training, so we access public places. Is there a way to help decompress, but not by active sniffing? Yes. Okay, so spaniels, they love spanieling. Like there's no other phrase for it other than when they wiggle around and do stuff. And often I find with a lot of spaniels, especially the ones that are particularly on the kind of stress side, when they get a bit anxious in public and they're a bit worried by something, they almost go into super sniff mode, where they will just start sniffing everything, but they don't process what they're sniffing. It's almost like if you're doom scrolling on Facebook when you get anxious because you're on like a train or something, everyone's around, you just kind of start scrolling through your phone. You're not really taking in the information, you're just distracting yourself. A lot of spaniels do that sort of behavior. So to help them, it's getting them to think more methodically when they're out there. So if you have any kind of boxes and things that you can hide in, it's teaching them to kind of slow down. And the best way to do that is to teach them to search properly rather than just sniff. So have an item, so either some food or a toy, something that they really like, and have just a couple of boxes out. And you may have seen this in some scent work classes, and you kind of hide it in one of the boxes. And then you just stand back and you let them in, and you let them, at first, they start barging around all over everywhere. As they start to get practice with it and they're like, okay, there's something to find, you can then start to guide them to go, okay, let's search the corners and then search this side of the room. And you can start to teach them how to do it more methodically. And they're able to then start to search for things and kind of check in with you for guidance. We want to try and make sure they can do it themselves, depends on the scent work that you're doing. So they start to focus a little bit more and go, okay, I'm finding something, rather than zooming around all over everywhere. Yeah, so if you do chamomile out and about, you can you can absolutely take that out and about. So have it on either like the fabric toy, if you've got a fabric toy that you put the scent on, or you can have it onto different scent cloths, and you can ask someone. So if you've got a friend or a partner that can wander around, you can kind of ask them to put it in a bush or a tree or in some grass to give them something that they can actively go and search for. That's a really, really useful thing to do. You can move up from chamomile and teach them different scents and have different ones on cue if you wanted to. Whenever I have any scent items out, my dogs will scent for catnip and Kong, so just like the normal Kong rubber. And I like having a piece of Kong kind of on me at all times, because it's easier than dealing with the scent cloths of machine washing and things. And if they're struggling, I'll just kind of throw a bit of Kong somewhere and just go, come search over here. And dry stone walls are fabulous for hiding scents on. Bushes are really good. Sometimes you can kind of wedge things in trees, and it gives them a focus. So rather than just kind of being frantic and not knowing what it is they're doing, it's you can cue them and they're like, right, chamomile's in the area. Now I need to sniff this. And you can work on getting them used to searching in different areas and being a lot more thorough with it. If you enjoy that kind of thing, have a look at a company called Scent Ops. I'll pop it in the chat. It's a new organization that are doing sports, essentially a scent work sports. And it's very similar to UK dog sniffer stuff, but it's timed, but it's not the fastest dog to find something, because a lot of the scent trials that you do, it's all about, can they do it the fastest? And if they're doing the fastest, they're not thinking. They're just running around finding it's roughly this area, and then they target that area. What Scentop is looking for is that bond and that relationship between the dog. Can you work together as a team? Can you go into a room and search the place and go, yes, this room's clear. Go into another room. This room's clear. Go somewhere else. This one's got the scent item and it's here. Go somewhere else, there's a scent item in the doorway, and they have different levels. And what I love about Scentops is it's wonderful for reactive dogs. So it gives everyone that has a reactive dog something that they can do, that they can feel proud of. It's okay, I can't take my dog for a walk down to the local park, but they compete in scent ops, and they can find like a tiny bit of cloth that has chamomile or catnip or cloves or something like that in a 6-bedroom house. Like they can clear it within 6 minutes or something. And it's a really nice thing to watch your dog go into a room and kind of search things. And once they get used to it, you can then make it harder and harder by putting different layers on and kind of having something inside some plastic that's then wrapped up in something else that's then put in a box inside another box inside another box. And their noses are absolutely incredible. And the confidence of searching, you can then start to combine that with let's go up high. Can they jump on things? Can they jump off things? Can they go inside things? Can they go around things? And along with the scent work, has anyone ever tried any dog parkour? Okay, dog parkour is a bit like urban agility. It's absolutely wonderful. One of our rehab trainers is a dog parkour instructor that's doing an online course for us at the minute. It's currently in the process of being written. And again, it's a wonderful way to engage with our reactive dogs away from everything else. So it's teaching them to put 2 paws on something and 4 paws on something so they can jump on things, off things, under things, through things. And then you start to have a look on your walks in the environment, and you can teach them to kind of jump onto stuff and around things and through things. If you have a look at a dog called Parkour Ninja on YouTube, if I have time towards the end, I'll happily show you a video. And it's such a wonderful bond experience. And with both of these activities, because the dogs are in theory working, we've got them engaged, we've got them focused, they're doing activities that they enjoy. They start to be able to do it around other dogs and other people. And you'll see that they'll start doing something. They'll clock that there's another dog or a person in the distance, and they'll be like, that's okay, I'm working. And they start to be able to ignore the distractions because they're doing something fun. And because we're there to support them, we can help guide them and go, it's okay, continue. Let's keep doing this. And it's a wonderful way to really help them. So when we're doing the decompression stuff, this is where we can build in those foundations. So it's, are they able to relax when we ask them to? Can they do some check-ins with us? Do they have elements of self-control? And it's just taking everything away and having a look at what we want out of this dog. Not necessarily what we wanted out of life with a dog, but what did we want from these dogs in particular? And sometimes writing it down can be really cathartic, because you can, especially if you do a list of what was the reason that you wanted a dog? What was everything that you wanted to do with a dog? And then what things can you do with the current dog that you have, and what can't you do yet? And always make sure that you put a yet, because there's nothing that, I don't want to say that you can never do something with a dog, because our dogs are amazing and some of them can recover a lot faster than others. But sometimes seeing it written down and going, okay, I really want to be able to do this with my dog, but my dog's never going to be able to do that. And we kind of have to see it and accept it and almost kind of grieve for that part and go, okay, what other things can we do? You know, so if you wanted a dog that would just be a really good companion for you and come to cafes and things like that, then it's okay, they can't do that yet. So can we relax in the house and have a cup of tea? Fantastic. Can they do it in the garden when it's quiet? Can they do it a little bit later on? Can you start to go for picnics and go to quiet places out and about and build them up? And once this becomes a predictable thing, you can then start to gradually go, okay, can we do this, and can we go on people watch? And people watching is a really good part of decompression, where you start to, it's towards the end of it, when your dog's relaxed, you've stepped away from everything, you formulated a bit more of a plan, and go to places that are nice and distant, and you've got a couple of people that walk past every so often, and just sit with your dog on a bench or take a blanket with you. It's a lot nicer to do in spring and summer, I'll be honest, than it is this time of year. Even retail parks and car parks. Retail parks and car parks are wonderful for this as well, because you can guarantee that any dogs around are going to be on lead. If there's any dogs at all, if there's a pets at home there, there's likely to be. Most people tend to ignore you on car parks because they're busy doing their shopping, and it gives you somewhere where you can sit and people watch, and your dog can sit and people watch and be safe. And what we find with a lot of our complicated dogs is that whenever they're exposed to things, they're only ever exposed for a short amount of time. They'll see whatever it is that they react to. They will react to it. The thing will go away, or they'll move away because we're all moving. And they don't get time to actually be exposed to that for a long period of time and actually go kind of, I didn't die. That it wasn't actually coming to me in the first place. And this can really help. And once they can do that, we can then go, okay, you can relax in the car park. Fantastic. Let's get out of the car. And the first thing we're going to do when we get out the car is we're going to search the car for our item. So going back to the scent work, when you park up somewhere new, if you've got a dog that's very kind of, I don't know what to do, to help calm their mind, is the first thing we do when you get out of the car is you're going to search the car, and somewhere on the car, either on the wheel arches, it can be on the side of something. Some people will kind of get the dogs to actually jump on their cars and have a look by the windshield screen and stuff. Depends very much on your car. I have a friend that has a very old Land Rover and she doesn't mind her dogs jumping all over them. I wouldn't really want my dog doing it over my cars because it's going to chip the paintwork a lot. But you can scatter things around the car and under the car and vary it. So the dog's got a job to do when they get out. So rather than panicking and barking at everything, it's a come search, and they can start to search and sniff for something. They can start to have a look around the environment and okay, back in the car. And for some dogs, just driving to a car park, doing a couple of searches around the vehicle, back in the car and going home is enough. We don't have to take our dogs out and it has to be for an hour. Some dogs can only do 10 minutes. And having short, positive experiences is a lot better than having one really long, not so nice one, or a long one where we've pushed it too far and they've just ended up seeing stress after stress after stress after stress. So breaking it all down can be so beneficial for our dogs. And that's what it is. It's just giving yourself that permission to not necessarily take our dogs for a walk, or to not leave them alone, or to just keep things out the way if they're resource guarding, and just relax and go, okay, what is it that we want? What is it that our dogs need? How can we help them? How can we combine that with our needs? And have a think about when they do react, how does it make you feel? And it will trigger an emotion in us. Some of us will feel frustrated. Others will get angry. Some of us will get really upset. Some will get really embarrassed. So have a think about how you're feeling and how you can help ground yourself in that moment, or avoid it to start off with, so you can support your dog. Because if you get frustrated or upset every time they have a reaction, and that kind of takes you into that kind of downward shame spiral almost, we're not going to be able to help our dogs. So we need to make sure that we're in a place where we're okay. And I remember with my reactive dog, I used to go on walks on my own without my dog, because I got to a point where whenever I went on a walk with him, I would almost startle every time I saw a dog in the distance, or I'd start to panic whenever I saw another dog in the distance. So to try and snap myself out of that, I would go for a walk where I could see dogs and just relax. So I didn't have that, like tightening up of the lead and the kind of twisting it around, because I was starting to worry that something was going to happen. Annie, you had dreams of lovely long hikes with her dog, but you can't imagine it. Yeah. Depending what happens on the walk, she can manage anything from 20 to 45 minutes, and then she starts going nuts. It's really disheartening. It's incredibly disheartening. And with the younger dogs, they struggle a lot, and they will get there. I mean, Annie's still a baby. She's not an adult yet, and she's got a lot of extra learning to do. And I think sometimes we focus so much on, I just want them to be able to do this. And the more we kind of stay in that mindset, the harder it is. So if you try and take a step back and go, she can't do that, but she's fantastic at doing this. I mean, I know with Kiki, we could hide a piece of cheese or a sausage anywhere in your back garden and she will find it within 5 minutes. We can start to make things really complicated for her. If we know that she can do between 20, 45 minutes, maybe go for around 30 minutes and end, or do a 15-minute one and end, and start to build her up. Sometimes the gradual exposure is a lot better, because the trigger second that can happen for seeing multiple things on a walk can sometimes be a bit too much for our dogs. And they can cope with the first few times they see something, but they can't the next. So it's allowing them to work through. And with Kiki, she is a lot better at working through things than she used to be. Just call it a day when she starts to struggle. If you get to a point where you're like, oh, you know what, she's doing really, really well, try and give her a little bit more and then end. Try not to let her get into the bit where she's going to fall back. And her recovery has been fantastic. And that's what we need to focus on most with our dogs, because the reactions they have are not going to stop for a long time. But the intensity of the reaction, the frequency of the reaction, and how long it takes them to recover afterwards are the things that change first. So we might find that the barks aren't as intense. They're able to disengage, engage back with us a lot faster, because they've got that time to regulate. If they never get the chance to go back to baseline, or to experience what it's like to be at a calm baseline where they're not constantly exposed to stuff, they're always up here. So every time they get triggered by something, they're just going up and they're just bouncing up here all the time. Whereas if we can go, you know what, let's take you away from all those situations for a few weeks, a few months, whatever it is that is needed for that individual dog, we can bring them right back down here and allow them to just be able to relax and sleep and rest. So give yourselves a little bit of a break, as well as our dogs. Some dogs are so stressed and they're continually exposed to the stresses that they do need medication support. And that's a discussion that's worth having with your vet if you have a dog where you're like, you know what, they have to be left alone every day for work, or they're noise sensitive, but we live near a field with crow scarers, or something along those lines. There are exceptions. Another message: baby steps under threshold, positive, positive, positive. I've learned that we don't owe everyone an explanation, just focus on your dog's will. Yeah, absolutely. You don't owe anyone your time or anything. It's a focus on you and your dog. If people are like, why are you doing that? They're not going to be able to understand. And I think unless you have lived with a dog that has had complications and has had different needs to other dogs, they're not going to understand, because they don't understand how you can't just ask them to do this. You can't just take them to a training class and suddenly fix them, because these are dogs that have usually been through some kind of trauma. They've had something happen to them, and that's changed the way that they think. It's changed the wiring of their brain. So they're not going to react to things in the same situations. Oh, everyone will still have an opinion, and they will give you that opinion. And I mean, they're just gonna, for lack of a better phrase, mansplain it to you. They will just say, you need to do this and you should do this, and oh, you're cuddling that dog, that's caused the problems, and you shouldn't have them on the sofa, and you shouldn't have them on the bed, and you need to feed them this, and you need to do that. And most of it just isn't true. A lot of it is, it's with these dogs, it's an emotional experience. We're literally changing their emotions. And if you think of yourself, if you have any fears or anxieties, how difficult it is for us to control ourselves when we have the ability to understand what's going on. It's still difficult. But for our dogs, they don't always understand what it is that's going on. They don't always understand why they're feeling that way. They just know that whenever they're in this situation, they get a feeling that they don't like, and that stresses them out, or they get scared.
Can I ask,
Of course you can.
how do you deal with the invisible dog?
Okay. When you say invisible dog, there's a few different ways of, so do you mean when people when they're attention seeking, or do you mean it in like a separation terms?
When we're out walking, my lovely dog Cookie, she's a lurcher, highly reactive.
Love lurchers.
She's disappeared somewhere, otherwise I'd show you her.
Yeah.
She'll smell something that has gone, and it's really, really difficult to.
Right. Okay.
Nearly always a dog, or
Yeah.
possibly a cat, but it's really difficult when I can't see what it is.
Yeah.
Then I can't help her, and I just don't know how to help her with the
Okay.
invisible dog.
Yeah. Smelling dogs on a walk can be such an exciting thing or a scary thing for a lot of dogs, because they're like, oh, it was here. And from the scent, from what we understand, they can tell a lot about what dogs have been here, how long it was since they were there, and things. So do you have any friends that have dogs?
I do.
Okay.
I've started walking in the mornings now.
Okay.
I only walk her in the mornings, 5:15. It's
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, weekends as well.
Yeah.
But during the week now, one of my friends, and one of Cookie's friends, she's a dog trainer as well, so she's been helping me.
Lovely.
And Cookie absolutely adores her dog.
Lovely.
So the last few weeks we've been walking together,
Yeah.
and it's really been helping her. But we can have the invisible dog down the street as we're going out for the walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
At any point, really.
If you ask any friends that you know that have dogs and this sounds really odd, and I'm really sorry, to rub basically like a microfiber cloth on their dog and send it to you in a Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
Because if you can get the sense of different dogs from different environments and bring them into a safe environment, and kind of like almost like enrichment boxes. So if you kind of have like some boxes in your back garden that you can put kind of like leaves and things from outside, and the scent of different dogs, you can allow Cookie to then explore the smell of other dogs in a safe environment where they can go, oh, this is interesting. And you can then reward it with food, you can sit there and help support them through the process of you can smell another dog, nothing bad's going to happen, we're absolutely fine.
Ah,
And it can really help them kind of process that by bringing the unsafe into the safe. You just need to make sure that she gets used to doing snuffle boxes first. And it's an enrichment game I did with my own dog when he had surgery. So he was on crate rest for like 12 weeks as an 8-month-old puppy. So when I took
oh,
my other dog for a walk, I had a pair of marigolds and a carrier bag. And every time my other dog kind of stopped and like had a really good rummage in something because there was an interesting smell there, I'd kind of pick it up, or I'd take some cloths with me and kind of rub it around and bring it home. And then we'd have a couple of boxes out in the garden. So he'd wander over and sniff. So he still got the experience of the walk and all the smells of things, but in a safe environment where he could explore. And by doing that, it can help them start to see it as a common thing that's regular. And if you do see them sniffing a smell out on a walk, add some extra smells onto it and see if you can encourage them to sniff and then look away so they can process that information without kind of starting to track. Because some dogs will sniff it and then they'll start tracking, and then that's it, they're off to search for the dog.
yeah.
And I'm assuming being a lurcher, they're probably kind of going down that path of something's here, I want to chase and follow. And a lot of them will do it with rabbits and cats and all things that they're like, I need to go and do this. So just finding ways of achieving that. And if you've got dogs that are reactive around people, asking friends to just kind of send some gloves or a hat or an old t-shirt and things like that to you. It's a really odd thing to ask. But the more you can do it, the easier it is for the dogs to start to understand the smell. And if you've got any dogs that you want Cookie to make friends with, it's a really good way to start, because it can be a familiar scent that's associated with this particular game, and they get extra food and they get to play around it. And then you can start to bring it out on a walk. So when they actually meet the dog and they smell it, they're like, I don't know you, but your smell's familiar and safe. And it's a nice way to kind of help connect the dogs together.
Yeah.
So that's one way to kind of help with the dogs that when they do smell on dogs on walk and have that kind of panic response, it makes it more familiar for them.
Yeah.
Try doing it in like a local park or a front garden or something first, because depending on your dog, sometimes bringing a dog smell into a back garden can make them a bit on the edge. So we can only do this in a dog that understands that their place is a place of safety, and that anything they smell within these four walls or within the garden is fine. So as long as you've got that, you're faced to it. If you're a bit unsure how they'll react, then put it on the front garden.
Yeah.
Or in like an empty car park or something, so they can explore and smell, but have it as like a bit of an enrichment game for them, and that's usually really beneficial for them. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. There's
Bit
a
of
lot
an
of
out
people.
there.
Yeah, yeah, I never thought of that. There's a lot of people who work with dogs, so I could always
Yeah.
some cloths for them and say, can you rub this on your dog, please?
Yeah, it's another thing to ask. It's something that we've often done on like Facebook, where I say just put a message on Facebook saying, weird question, but could anyone rub a scent cloth or just like a microfiber cloth or a t-shirt or something old onto their dog, put it in a Ziploc bag and post it to me, please. I'm doing some training with my dog. And most dog owners will be like, that sounds really interesting what you're doing. And then they can engage with it. If they're worried about visitors, it's a great way to help distract dogs with visitors is if you ask them to bring some items of clothing and put them in like a pillowcase, and you can give that to the dog. And then the dog gets to think of all the kind of scents, and they get to engage with the pillowcase and get all the scent and all the information that they need from the people without having to actually approach them directly, which can just help reduce some of that conflict they get from wanting to go up to the person, not to say hello, but because they need to sniff them to see if they're safe. So doing scent cloths and stuff with different dogs or just out on a walk can be a really good way to kind of bring that in safety to make it more familiar. Because with these dogs and part of the decompression, it's all about making the unfamiliar familiar for them. So it's a let's just allow you to explore this and feel safe. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. If you mention it to the trainer that you're working with, a lot of them will understand roughly what I mean, and will be able to help guide you into other ways of how you can implement it into the training programs that you're working through.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to see how they react. And some of them will have favorite dogs that they know. And if you have any sense where, especially in lockdown, me and a couple of my other friends, because our dogs couldn't really see each other, we sent toys to each other that were our dogs. And the look on their faces when they got a toy from a dog they didn't know to a toy that was completely new and one from a dog that they did know was just wonderful. It was like, oh, I know this is my friend. And they had like a completely different reaction just from that smell of having a new friend's toy. So it can be really useful for dogs to kind of gauge and communicate with each other through scent across ways. It's a wonderful thing to experience. But until you start doing it, you don't always see.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That's okay. You've asked, scent sticks. What do you mean by scent sticks? Do you mean like the incense sort of ones, or is it a specific one that are scent trainers? Guys, I'm sorry, there's a question. Oh, okay. Yeah, like duck and things. Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the gun dog websites, for those of you that don't know, you can buy scents of different breeds of ducks. So you can get woodchuck, you can get mallard, you can get pigeon. I'm aware they're not necessarily ducks. The pheasant, the squirrel. I think you can get badger, you can get fox, you can get all kinds of different scents that you can put on different things that you can do the same thing for. So you can either teach them to search for that particular scent. So when they're out and about, they're looking for it, which depending on what scent you go for, be careful, because we don't want to encourage dogs to actually start chasing down foxes, because that would be illegal. But if you pick a scent like a raccoon or something that isn't in the UK, or at least native to the UK, it's a bit safer, because they start to learn that if they smell this scent, they can follow it and they can get a reward at the end of it. But they're really enriching scents to use. And if you do the kind of enrichment box thing that I mentioned earlier, it's also a great decompression thing that you can do after a walk. So if your dog has had a particularly stressful walk and you try to time it well, but we try as much as you want, it's going to happen at some point where someone's going to arrive, or you bump into someone else that has a reactive dog that's walking early in the morning as well. Bring them home and give them some enrichment boxes, give them something that they can snuffle on, and that can help them just calm down. And that comes back to that safety that we were talking to at the beginning. Whereas if they have a secure base to come back to, that they can cope with the world, similar to us. If as we grow, we all have a place of safety, be it our parents or our house or our dogs or our partner. And if we have a particularly stressful day, we all have a routine or a place that we will go to recover from that experience. And at the times where you have the ability to recover in safety and you can share that with people and you can offload, the stressful experience doesn't bother you as much because you have that relationship. You're able to go, okay, I'm safe now, I can process it. That was scary, but nothing bad happened. I'm okay. Whereas if you don't have that and you're dealing with it on your own, that's where a lot of the excess reactivity comes from. That's where the trauma tends to happen with us as well as our dogs. It's not being able to recover and process it in safety. So having these abilities for our dogs to go, yeah, that was really, really scary. Come on, let's go home. It's the equivalent of getting ice cream with your children if they've had like a really scary experience. It's, I know you fell off your bike, that was really scary. Let's go home and get some ice cream. It's almost that kind of thing where it's that was really scary. This is how you cope with it, and helping them through that. And you'll find over time that the dogs start to go, that was really scary. I need to go and choose something, or I need to go and sniff something. And they'll start to do it on their own away from you as they start to build up that bit of independence. And that's where scent work can really, really come in handy, because they start to learn, that's really scary. I'm going to go and sniff something. And that's how they recover. Or I need to choose something. So they'll pick up something. So any dogs that like to carry things like balls, or if they constantly search for stones and sticks, sometimes it's a medical thing. Often it's their coping strategy. They feel better when they have something in their mouth, or if they're tugging on something. So give them these items that they can do as soothers until they're able to cope with it more on their own. Did that answer your question, Natasha? Does anyone else have any questions or comments, or would like to vent about anything before we finish up? Because it's not easy when you go into this. And I find with decompression, it's almost like a cycle where you start off going, okay, we're going to have a stress break. Everything's going to be nice and relaxed. And then you start to gradually go out into the world, and then something will happen and you're like, no. And then you have to go back into decompression and then build yourselves back up. And it's almost like you're in this never ending cycle. But each time the recovery is faster and faster because they've got that decompression time now. And it's just allowing yourself the permission to go, you know what, I'm in a really bad mood. You're not in a good place. So let's just skip the walk. Let's just not do this thing. And yeah, even if your dog isn't reactive, decompression is really important. There are some dogs that will, especially spaniels, where they don't know when to stop. They'll just keep going and going and going, and they'll bounce around everywhere and they'll sniff everything and they're constantly moving. And everyone needs time to be able to just stop and relax. And the power of just doing nothing is so important for these dogs. And if we can teach them just to chill out and to just stop and relax, it really helps them to start to learn to regulate themselves a little bit more, because some of them just don't realize that what they actually need when they're kind of running around like lunatics is to stop, because there's some of them haven't even been taught it. A lot of them don't even think about doing it. We have a lot of people that go through our If in Doubt Chill Out course, and we use a lead at first to kind of help limit what they're able to do, so it kind of helps reduce their choices, so they have to kind of chill out. And they get to a point where they'll be pacing around, and as soon as you click the lead on, before you've even put your foot on it, they're like, oh yeah, I can just sleep, and they just crash. And it's like they just don't even think about stopping. So giving them these things that they can do that kind of almost force it, but in a positive way. So you know what, just stop moving, let's just stop and people watch and let's chill out, so they can learn to regulate themselves, is just so beneficial for these dogs. There's a quick question: any advice to reacting lunging at squirrels? They're everywhere, so avoiding them on walks, even quite sniffy walks, is impossible. Yeah. Once he's spotted one, it's very difficult to. Yeah, squirrels can be so exciting for dogs. Any kind of herding breeds, collies, spaniels, hunting breeds, they absolutely love it, and it's the movement that they're after. So they're starting off with little things where they learn to stop to movement. So I would start off by teaching it as like a separate exercise, before you kind of build it up into the real world, of just have some food and do like the really basic exercise of if I'm holding something, if you back away from it, I'm going to drop it. And this can be food or a toy. Border collies work really well for toys. And it's essentially capturing that freeze. So we're not asking for anything. It's I'm going to put my hand out, and a second they kind of stop, release it for them. And then move it around. Once they stop, release it for them. So they start to get used to, as something moves, they stop. And you can build it up to use different kind of tuggy toys and flirt poles. And you teach them essentially a sit to movement. And border collies are fantastic at this once they understand the rules. So they start to learn that the second they see something moving, they freeze and they get ready for something. And then you can build on, you freeze and you come this way, or you freeze and you sniff. Usually it's a freeze and chase. And once you can get them to stop, and then, okay, now you can chase it. So have a ball up, move it around a little bit, stop it, they freeze until you can start to move it and they stay still. And it adds to the self-control stuff where they start to move it and then you drop it and you start to give them a release word that means now you can have it. And then you make it a little bit harder by moving around a little bit more. So they have to wait until you release them. And then you can get to a point where it's you drop one ball and then you throw another and release them in that area. So they start to learn. At first, it's the self-control, impulse control stuff. So you want to start off with, can you have self-control? Can you pause? Then can I make it more exciting so you can resist the impulse to chase it? Then can you deal with the frustration that you have to wait a little bit longer? And then it's can you deal with you can't have that one, but you can have this one. So it's not that ball, this ball, not this treat, that one, not this one, until eventually you can build up to you can't have that and you can't have anything else because life sucks and you have to deal with it. But that's a really hard ask for an 18-month-old border collie that hasn't worked through that process. So you kind of do it in a step-by-step gradual way until they're able to go, okay, let's get some sense of some squirrels, or let's be at a distance from them. And every time they see one, you throw a ball in the other direction, or you have a ball and a rope, or a tuggy thing, or something. So a second they're able to kind of just glance their eyes in your direction, when they're a distance from the squirrel, they get to do something else. So it's not that this. So you're building up an alternative reaction for them. And that's the best way to kind of manage it in the moment. You can work through like a really quick like desensitization program with them, but this time of year it's not worth starting because squirrels are everywhere. So it's okay, let's just stop and see if we can get a check-in and then reward them for something else and do more active stuff in the moment. And then you can build up for the next year of working on the self-control stuff to building up to, can I sit in the forest and can we both watch the squirrels go by? Which is something that is possible. They just need to work like impulse and self-control first, get the frustration tolerance under control, and then they can work up. So just start with the basic things, the self-control exercises, and see if you can teach them a check-in. There's a free check-in challenge on our website at the minute. If you click on the button, there's a little 6-week course that you can work through that's all about teaching the dogs to disengage from something and check back in with you. So that combined with those kind of little exercises will build in the foundations. So it's probably not going to help you too much this year. You'll get little bits you'll get mini wins because he's a border collie, he's going to be smart, but he's also a collie that's going to want to chase. So there's going to be levels at which if he first sees them, you might be able to catch him, but too many of them is going to be too much for him. But if you can practice that by next autumn, you should be able to be at a place where he's able to look at them and ignore them and focus on you instead. So it's building up that kind of thing with them. So, and I think that's all we've got time for. For the check-in challenge. I will pop a link in the chat for the check-in challenge. Hold on, I'll just jump on the site and find it for you. And for those of you that haven't been on the site, we have some wonderful blogs on there that have been written by our clients. We've got 2 more episodes that are due to go up that are going to be released shortly. And they're wonderful because it's our clients' experience of working with us, the good, the bad, and the ugly of how difficult it is. So if you want to feel a bit more supported in these situations, you can have a look at our blogs. We also have a community as well if you're interested in that kind of thing. But our check-in challenge is free for everyone. And the link, I'm just popping it into our Zoom chat now. If anyone is interested on that. It's one of our foundation behaviors that we think every dog in the world should be able to do. And it's can they look at something and back at you without you asking them to? It's they have to do it on their own. So it's the first part of that kind of emotional control. So it'll be lovely to see you all. We do these every month. So if you want to come back to another, you are more than welcome to. If you want to join the community, you're more than welcome to. If you need any more help or support, please send us a message and we'll be more than happy to help support you and your dog. Any further questions before we end?
No, just thank you.
You're very welcome, Rachel. I hope it was okay. I hope you've got a little bit out of it. It's a bit of a crash course in decompression, but the emphasis in that it's okay. It's fine to just not do anything with your dogs. So many people just advise just doing something over and over and over again with dogs. And, oh, you're struggling with this, you have to teach them this. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just stop and just not teach them anything. Just allow them to just exist with you. And so they can see that other things can exist and it's not a problem. And we don't actually have to train all the time everywhere, because if you can just resist with them and build up that bond and get a really good attachment with our dogs, everything else just comes more naturally. And it builds up to a better relationship. Good to be reminded, Her Royal Highness makes progress. It's incredibly tempting to do more and more when they start to see progress. You are currently in the hardest stage of rehabilitation, Annie, because she's done a lot of it. So Annie's been with us for about 8 months or so now, I think, maybe a little bit around there. And they've done all the decompression, they've done all the foundation things, and now it's putting it into practice. And it's almost like walking on ice. You kind of have to pick the right path, and sometimes it goes well, sometimes it goes wrong, and you kind of are in and out. And it's just important to remember that it's almost better to go back and do less than to try and do more, especially if you're only doing more out of guilt. And we do feel guilty that we're not giving our dogs these wonderful lives running around on hills, and some of them want it, some of them don't. But if you've got that bond, the dogs want to be with us, and as long as they're doing something with us, they're happy. And there are no health concerns if you have a dog that doesn't go on a walk, but they're happy and healthy because you're doing other things with them. It's only if you're not doing anything with them at all where there's a concern. So don't let anyone else tell you otherwise.
I just feel that when things have been going well and we've been going out for walks and all the rest of it, and then if something happens and I'm like, oh, actually, no, we shouldn't, we need to step back. And it's stupid because I can tell that she's too hyper at that point and actually she probably needs a day off, but then I still feel guilty for not taking her out.
it's a horrible cycle, isn't it? Because you're like, I know you shouldn't go out today because you can't cope with it, but they're not taking you out makes you feel guilty because you're a dog and you need to go out. And it's trust in the process, and sometimes just looking at them. And most dogs are more than happy to sleep, and if they're just relaxing and sleeping next to you, they don't need the walk. If they're engaging with the sniffy games and the toys, they don't need it. If they're running around bouncing off the walls, then they need something, but they don't always need to leave the house. Some of them going out the house makes them worse, and they end up coming back after a walk far higher than before they left. And if you're experiencing that all the time, the walk's probably not the best thing, or at least not that type of walk. I need to start thinking about, rather than the walk, of just doing activity with your dog and go, okay, we're going to go and do some scent work outside, or we're going to go and do some tracking, or we're going to do some parkour, and we're just going to spend 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes in the woods learning how to jump up trees, for instance, or just searching for something. And that's far more productive for you and your dog and your bond than just going for a half an hour walk around the streets or something like that. So you're doing very well, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm just going to stop the recording.